The closest that the world ever came to nuclear war was in the 1980s, not the 1960s, and nobody knew about it whatsoever. It all centers around a special project by NATO run almost every year, and in 1983 it was called Operation Able Archer. During the Cold War, every single year there would be a huge practice operation of all NATO allies in which tens, if not hundreds of thousands of troops all coordinated a warlike scenario using every branch of the military. And for Operation Able Archer, they went all out. They used not only every branch of the military, but every type of major weapon that they had. Tanks, fighter jets, nuclear weapons, that was the last line. And they even had like the same types of communications that would have been used in an actual nuclear event. They even had world leaders participating in this, just reading out scripts. And remember, during this Cold War, on the other side of the Iron Curtain was the USSR. And all that Soviet intel was picking up was a lot of communications from high places going to and fro at an erratic rate, and they started to see huge military formations and weapons build up. So for the first 24 to 48 hours, the Soviet military was on more readiness. They sent maybe fighter jets a little closer to the border against NATO, just in case anything did happen. But it was the day of the nuclear launch simulation by NATO under Operation Able Archer that set the Soviet Union's military in a panic, because they thought that this was all a trick, that it was just a fake training exercises, and they were actually going to launch the first strike. And the Soviets were right to be afraid. In 1983, President Ronald Reagan at the time called the Soviet Union an evil empire. Tensions were extremely high because of Flight 007, in which the Soviet Union shot down 269 passengers from a plane in which one of the passengers killed was a U.S. congressman. That same year, the United States allowed Germany to hold on to GCLM cruise missiles and Pershing IIs, which could strike Moscow in less than 10 minutes. So amidst all that tension, the Soviets are seeing a huge NATO buildup all along the Warsaw Pact's border. They're seeing NATO leaders give very frequent and encrypted information amongst each other, and then they're seeing a fake nuclear launch that looks so legitimate. The Soviets went on very high alert. They started loading nuclear-capable aircraft, had them at base, ready to launch. Their strategic missile systems were on high alert, and their setup was just short of launch readiness. Then, of course, the vast bulk of all Soviet intel and reconnaissance was watching every single move that these NATO formations were making. Fortunately, NATO didn't launch any missiles, they didn't fire any massive degrees of weaponry, and the Soviet Union just kept watching and waiting until they were sure that, the operation, the exercise, it was over. It was just for practice. It wasn't until months later, after the operation was completed, that American forces realized how close the Soviets were to full nuclear readiness. What makes this so scary is that nobody had any idea what was happening, and we almost went into a nuclear war because of literally miscommunication. At least with the Cuban Missile Crisis, the world knew what was going on, and they got to see the full standoff. Operation Able Archer was in complete secret. For those of you who are wondering if something like that is possible now between the United States and Russia, I highly doubt it. Even back during the Cold War, the United States had much better technology for intelligence and espionage, while the Soviets may have had, let's say, better human intelligence. They had more infiltration with their own spies. But right now, Russia is a shell of the power and intellect that the Soviet Union had, and the United States clearly outclasses them, both when it comes to technical intelligence and, of course, human intelligence. And when I say human intelligence, I'm talking about espionage and intel gathering. I am the Geo Husar, and I find these operation names to be pretty funny. Thanks for watching.